Well, good morning, everyone. We're a little early today. It is Tuesday, and I am in Orlando. So we are actually at the Bohemian, one of my favorite hotels, and right here in downtown. So I got my Starbucks, which we know. If you watch regularly, you'll see I always have one. And we're a little early because I'm going to be on another show this afternoon. So I'll be on the TED Show today, which is going to be across the street at the Citrus Club. And we're excited to get started. Okay, we're going to bring my dad in and get him on camera. We're going to be discussing minimum wage, something that has definitely been a hot topic, and the question of how to handle it. Hi, Dad. How you doing?
Doing good.
Can you hear me okay?
Hear me now.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. We can hear you too.
All
So
right.
we're in the same state today.
We are.
We are. I'm in Orlando. I'm at the Bohemian today.
Oh my goodness. I was thinking you were driving a semi around yet, and I didn't know where you were at.
Yeah. No, a lot of times that's what happens. But no, today I'm going to be on the TED Show right here in
Right.
Orlando. Yep. And so we'll be doing
Are we
that
gonna be able to
today.
see that?
Yes, that should
Okay.
be live on the TED Show. It's Ted Bogert is the one that will
Right.
be doing the interview. So that's at 11:30 today. But we've got to do some sound checks beforehand. And
Correct.
tomorrow I'm flying to DC, and I'll be meeting with some reporters tomorrow up in DC, which I'm really excited about.
Wow.
There are some groups that are talking about science in the federal government and the impact of politics on scientists. So I'd kind of,
Go
my
figure.
pin is turned. We got to fix that. Yes, go figure. I fit right in the middle of that, so that's pretty exciting. And what's great is it's a bipartisan position. The House has just passed a preliminary bill, and it was supported on both sides, which is great. Good news for everybody. And they picked up my story and contacted us. So I hope tomorrow will be
Really?
fruitful as well. Yeah, which is
Good
really
deal.
exciting. Yeah, so it's a whirlwind. I'm off to Boston the next day.
What? Now, where's the bus?
It is in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay. Living a free life.
It is. Well, I'm very excited about Tucson, Arizona, because I would like to give a shout out to the parking options in Tucson, $4.50 a day, and that is at the airport.
Wow.
And they will take my RV. So quite happy to have that. But funniest thing, people keep saying, "Aren't you so glad to be home for a couple days and sleeping in your own bed?" I said, "No, my bed is on the RV."
I was gonna say that's not your own bed is back in Tucson. Wow.
I literally moved my bed onto the RV, so I am literally more comfortable there. But
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah,
All
so it's kind
right.
of funny. Yeah, well, anyone who's been married more than a year knows that
Yes.
if your husband is left at home for 5 months on his own with a little one, and
Yes.
we have a welcomed, but I'll tease him, freeloader at our house as well. One of the mentees that Chris oversees through cyber is buying
Sure.
a home, but he couldn't move in for an extra 6 weeks, so he's been living at our house. So,
You're crazy.
so I walk into what is as clean as could be expected under the circumstances, but perhaps
Oh,
not where I would have it.
I don't even want to think.
Ah. So
Let's
today
jump
is,
in because we
yeah, we're
got
gonna
compressed
do
time.
right. We're gonna do minimum wage today.
Wow. Um,
So give us your
that's a
spiel, Dad.
well, my spiel is, you know, it's simple but yet complex for some people to understand, or they think that they're creating something better when they raise it or adjust it. Um, I just don't want people to think it's considered as a living wage. It never has been, never will be, and the
Right.
bottom is always the bottom. The whole purpose is to make certain that you're not poverty stricken during your lifetime if that's where you want to be. But the incentives out there to improve your life should be the key to figuring this out. I mean, and I know the service industry is plagued with minimum wage people simply because of the way things work out. And I've done I used to do a lot of that work in a previous life and stuff like that, and work with employers and stuff like that. I'm also
Right.
very, I do see the necessity for states and cities to regulate depending on their economic strata that they're in and why they have to adjust that piece. But it's unfortunate that we don't have people trying to climb out of the minimum wage, and that's, I guess, where I come when I want to talk about that. Is the fact is, I think your push for education going forward is one of those items to help people understand that they're going to have to better themselves and take on, education to help them progress through, getting out of a minimum wage position.
Right.
But with all that said, I think we've disrespected a tremendous amount of folks by putting, this fact in there when they are highly productive in the jobs that they perform. And usually, where I come from in the janitorial field,
Right.
and I dealt with it forever and a
We
day,
clean
and
toilets together.
we did. Um, and one of the things to motivate individuals who really are in that predicament was a daily task, and I took it very personally and very seriously when I was out working with my people and encouraging them and let them know how important they were and blah, go through that exercise. I don't know that a lot of employers do this, and unfortunately, I think is one of the main reasons why we're dealing with it on every day practically, and the discussions around the nation and what's going on. So I've babbled on. I'd like to hear some of the input, especially because you've been traveling the nation now, and I think you have
Right.
some good input there from some of the discussions you've been able to be with different folks, unions, and different things. So I'll let you.
Yeah, so let's unpack all of this, right? Because there's a
Yeah,
lot here, right? The first is minimum wage a living wage? And I think we can all agree the answer is no, right? The
never
minimum
intended.
wage is, and perhaps not, but nonetheless, where we are today is that there are folks that are trying to live off that, and that isn't
Right.
working for a variety of reasons. I think where sometimes we get this a little messed up is when we have a 16-year-old, for example, right, working 10 hours a week is perhaps not the same as a 30-year-old with a family working 40 hours or more.
Right.
And so that's kind of where that distinction comes in. Another thing to consider is that we've not had a minimum wage that has steadily increased. As I
No.
mean, I remember making $2.12 an hour. I mean, that's what I made when I was a waitress, and that was in California. So with the cost of living as high as it was, I was in the Bay Area and making very, very low end. And then they moved it up to the requirement of it being $4.25 an hour. We were all so excited. That extra $2.
Right.
But but if you've never worked that, I think it's really hard for people to understand. But why that hasn't steadily increased is something I've always wanted to ask. That said, when you make a leap, and that's what a lot of Democrats are pushing for, $15 an hour as an immediate change. You also essentially, one, raise the lower end, right, where everything just costs more in general because all the businesses would have to separate more. And so you change the 0 point. The other thing you do is talking to a lot of small businesses, you kind of shock the system, right? Anytime there's a leap, rather than a steady increase. So a number of Democrats have said 15 is the goal and we need to get moving, and I can certainly understand that position. I was in an interview a couple days ago. I start to lose track of my days, to be honest, where I was in Prescott, Arizona. And I'll
Listen.
say, sure. So this is state number 42, meaning I've been to a lot of states around the country, and it has that region has been the region that has been the most conservative that I have run into so far. And that doesn't mean that there aren't equivalents, but certainly there is a push there. And I was asked, you know, what are you going to change about the economy when it's already going well? And my response was, well, I'm not going to fix what ain't broke. And there are
Right.
parts of the economy that are doing very well. What I failed to say, and I'll add it here, is that it's not universally doing well.
Right.
There are people that are doing phenomenal. There are people that are doing well. There are indicators that we look at in Wall Street and other places that tell us that overall the economy is doing well. That does not mean that it is true for all people. And we need to think about all people when we're talking about, looking at the entirety of the nation. Doing well is not the same as what individuals boots on the ground. So I'm in Nebraska one day and I go into this boot shop. I have to pull off the road for some reason. I love to look at boots. I'm always on the search for red boots. And so I start talking to the owner and she says, everyone's talking about the economy being great, but we just lost a whole bunch of workers at the railroad. We're about to lose another 150 in related areas. And she said, it's not working well for us. And, they have floods coming and they have mudslides that are happening. And she says, federal government's not getting involved. No one's coming to help us. We band together as a community and we help each other out. She said, but, I'm working my tail off at this job and you can see how many customers are here and it was empty. And this is the reality for many people in our nation, even if the overall indicators are positive. So we have to look at it at a deeper level, right? One of the deeper levels, as you mentioned, was education. But Dad, if I've got 3 kids and I'm 24 years old and I have no support from anyone,
Sure.
I am exhausted by the end of the day. How am I doing school on top of all of that?
Right.
And sure, you can say, well, maybe you should have made different life decisions. Okay, fine, but I can't go
So what?
backward.
It's over. That doesn't. You can't
Exactly.
back up the clock.
Exactly. And this is why I'm so excited about the education plan that the government is already working on. So this is not just my plan, although I was the lead on the project, so I suppose in many ways
Right.
it's my baby. But the thing is, by creating a digital backbone that connects your experience and by being able to measure your experience and give you credit for what you know and are capable of, even if you didn't learn it in school, we recoup some of that time for people. So let me give you an example. Someone said, well, okay, take my example that I just gave. You're a single mom of 3. How does it help you? I said, well, a single mom of 3 is a badass at being able to multitask, is able to handle multiple personalities at once, is able to keep moving even when she's exhausted. These skills matter in the workplace. I can't tell you how many times I would love to have somebody like that on my team, right? But we don't have a way to put mom on a resume. Although you might see that I do it quite often.
Right.
I always say I'm a scientist, innovator, and mama, because we don't recognize some of these other skills. I was talking to a woman just yesterday. She's a hairdresser, and I asked, she had a 17-year-old. I said, oh, what is your son going to do next? She says, well, he doesn't really do well in school. But she was quick to add, but he's really great at working with his hands. He's amazing in working outdoors. He does all of these things, but getting a job is really hard because how do we credit that? All anyone sees is that he wasn't a good student. And what we need to see is what people are capable of. And when we can do that, then we get them 1 increment higher in their job. Maybe they're making $1 or 2 extra. We get them the credit and we clarify, hey, if you do just a little bit more, now you're qualified for the next level. So to break that down, it means, number 1, making sure that we credit people for their skills and capabilities no matter how they learned them. And number 2, making sure that our resumes reflect for businesses our true capabilities and not just our formal education. That allows people to have the freedom to move upward. One of the groups that I interviewed out in California called Guru, if you'd like to look it up, it's GOORU.org. They are creating for free this background. It is led by the gentleman who did the expanse of Google Maps. All that digital infrastructure is being used to help. Yeah, well, so for anyone who hasn't seen it, that's right. And so these are free options that are bringing education to everyone and crediting people for their capabilities and their natural tendencies. And this is how we get the country moving.
I think the struggle really is is almost deeper than I mean, not deeper than what you're covering, but it's so deep from the standpoint your example of a parent of three, single parent of three, even trying to improve themselves and get themselves recognized, because of the all the dimensions of having three children in their life besides themselves to
Right,
manage
right, right.
is extraordinary. And when you said they were tired, I mean, that's even if they weren't working, three children to manage at different ages through different processes and trying to get them into a certain skill level or education or plus 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 is extraordinarily difficult.
Right.
It is borderline fatiguing, if not actually fatiguing.
Well,
And it
definitely.
takes a lot of and it takes a tremendous amount of commitment because it really you're no longer yourself any longer.
Don't
There's
I
no self.
know?
Yeah, well, there's no self time,
Right.
and so we go through this struggle and stuff, and I I've struggled with trying to figure out how that can be helped or fixed or at least assisted through something. And I know, people talk about daycare and how we can
Yep.
subsidize daycare and stuff like that. The fear with that is also with parents. They worry about child daycare and how that's going to work, and then schools and their hours don't necessarily coordinate with a job. I mean, here's a dynamic of someone who's trying to feed their three young
Right.
kids. Um, so we get all those little problems. I mean, you go through that whole gamut of stuff, and then you add in the education process. It's unfortunate. It'd be nice if we just could plug in a jump drive in the side of your head and said, okay, I'm better at what I'm doing now than I was
Right.
before, simply because you already have that knowledge. I think that we're getting away from the minimum wage, deal because of how we went with our discussion. But I'd like to talk about the fact is that somehow we've got to figure out how to think that a minimum wage, which was there's a lot of different reasons it was put in place, but basically it was put in place to keep people from being in destitute poverty, not to take them out of poverty, because the tide, all boats rise at the same time. So the fact is, if you raise the level, of the minimum wage, then prices go up, then inflation, blah blah blah, and you can go through that whole economic strata, and that battle will never be changed as long as you think that the bottom is always going to be where we benchmark. So I don't.
Right, but that doesn't mean that you leave it low, right? I mean,
Oh no, no, I'm not
inflation's
saying
happening
that.
anyway, so you do need to raise it. It's
Yeah,
just a
and
matter
the
of
thing is,
doing it as
yeah,
a shock to the system is different than doing it over time. It should have been just done over time. It should be
it
tied
should be, and
to
there's a number of nations that are doing that. I don't know
perfect.
how strong their economies are, but I know. I hate bringing up France because I don't think their economy is very strong at all, but they have a progressive line. We have these gigantic leaps. We go from $4 an hour to $7 an hour, and that is just so unmanageable when you talk about small
Correct.
business and even
Right.
large business. I mean, large business today is really struggling with the minimum wage increases simply because they can't adjust their pricing fast enough to do it.
Right.
So how do they reduce their cost of operation if they don't do it? Target was just brought up in the New York Times yesterday regarding they've got a number of employees that are getting more money per hour, but they've cut all their hours in half, and so they're losing money because now they're down to 20 instead of working 40, and automation. I think it's in Oregon. They're looking at laws to limit um, uh, or the checkout, where you automated checkouts, where you go through. They're looking at saying each business can only
Ah,
have so many of them to keep people employed. I try to go not so much through there, but fact is, the lines that the ones that are staffed are so long, you're almost forced to go through the automated line because you can't do it. And if you recall, we went through a tremendous amount of fluctuation. You don't remember much, but you've always had self-serve gas. I remember the days when you pulled up and the guy came running out and washed your windows, checked your oil, did all this kind of stuff. And
There are two states that still do this, and I know because I've driven them.
really,
Yes. Yeah, New
what?
Jersey, and the other one is, I can't remember what the other one is. It's more to the west
Okay,
because it caught me off guard.
wow,
But yeah, there are two states that do that. Is it Oregon, maybe?
could be. I
It
mean, I
might be
know.
Oregon. I can't remember which one it is, but yeah,
Okay.
there's two states. New Jersey, I know, because it's on the East Coast. There's one on the
Oh,
West Coast as well. So, Dad, I think what you're trying to get at is
yeah,
there's two layers to this, right? So, minimum wage is a law. It is taken care of by the legislative branch. What
correct.
we do in the executive branch is create programs. So while I can give you my opinion on the fact that there should be some sort of graduation that happens and some sort of tie to inflation, that's just my opinion. I don't have any influence over that. That is not the job to which I'm applying. And further, we get ourselves into so much trouble when we try to solve huge problems by simply passing a law.
Right.
You're not going to stop automation by refusing
No.
to, but by requiring human work for a job that could be done cheaper and faster on your own. I mean, that
Right.
doesn't help anyone. That's a band-aid solution, right? That is not
Correct.
preparing people for the future.
No.
You've got to change the education system. We've got to look at preschool daycare. The reason I bring this one up because the assumption is that it should only be for low-income families. But here's the thing: we have a culture change that's happening, and young people are not having children as much anymore. And part of the reason, not entirely the reason, part of the reason though, is because it's expensive.
It is.
And so what we're finding is the people with the highest amount of means, and by means I mean time, funds, and job level and security, are having the least number of children.
Yes. Right.
So I actually worked on this on the inside, which was so funny. I'm pretty sure I'm the only DoD employee that was reading through the 600, I kid you not, 600-page document that was put together to justify universal free preschool and daycare. I don't know why it was 600 pages. They could have said it in two. But essentially, I bring that up because it deters anyone from reading it. So it's really
Of course.
ridiculous to have that much data. You put it in an appendix, fine, but even that wasn't necessary. The punchline is this: that if we don't prepare our young people for the future, then the entire nation suffers. So if a deterrent to having children is having access to supportive activities that reduce the cost, then let's take care of that. If it increases the capability of our young people to be successful in the future, then let's take care of that. The cost is relatively minimal when we start changing the education system. So this is kind of a no-brainer, and it was pretty darn easy on the inside to justify. They just, like I said, needed to do it in 2 pages and not 600 so someone else besides me would read it. But DoD is already interested. In fact, in November, here in Orlando, the Air Force is sponsoring the world's largest modeling and simulation program. And you want to know what their focus is? And it starts at birth: social and emotional development. Why?
Wow.
Because our folks are not ready for advanced military training if they don't come out of high school ready for life. And they're not ready for high school unless they've had a good education all the way from birth. So the point at which the Pentagon is starting to see that educating individuals from birth forward in the capability to handle life, not just how much knowledge you can find on Google, but actually resilience and social skills and the ability to understand people and self, that's the point at which we absolutely cannot ignore this any longer. The next thing, though, that we get to is how do you get somebody out of a rut? The gentleman that I met in Oregon, which posted yesterday, $50 million enterprise, he takes you from wherever you are. If you are coming out of incarceration, if you are in the addicted population, if you are homeless and have mental health issues, they don't care. They will get you in a job. They will get you in pre-housing. They will stabilize you. And they're not taking hardly any money from the federal government. These are the ways that we do it because it's looking at the whole person. When I was in Northern Oregon, when we were talking about micro-dwelling, what's the benefit of micro-dwelling? Part of it is cost. Part of it is shared resources. So if you're only paying a tenth of a living room and a tenth of a kitchen, and you get your whole living space to yourself, you're still paying a lot less. But what if you do that with childcare, and you do that with driving to and from school, and you do that in community as well, where, you know, 4 single moms are working together to make sure each of them drives 1 day a week. Wow, now I have some time. What if you're learning together? Instead of taking a course all by yourself, you and 3 other moms are working together to take that course simultaneously. As long as you all develop the competencies, we don't care anymore if you do the homework together. Share and pool these resources. That's how you start to get that momentum. You start to get that forward movement. You start to get, to your point, the energy and enthusiasm, and you start to see change. Laws won't do it.
No, I think, and I'm going to add one thing to your whole about you. I
Me
think
personally.
maybe, yeah, really, this is a personal thing. I think one of the things that has to happen, there has to be someone, not only just to be an architect, but has to inspire. If
Yeah.
someone doesn't inspire light the flame within the population to do what you just described, it won't ever work. There has to be some inspiration that has to be attached to not only hard work and all the other things. So if you take one thing from what we're talking about today and put it on because I know you can do it and I know you already have done it to so many people, keep inspiring these folks that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that this is going to work and it can work and it will work. And the fact is, it's not only for yourself, but it's for your children and your children's children that we get this train running quickly and with some type of commitment to understand that we only have, I'm out at an age where I can look back and I know some of the, I think I make statements based on experience about, well, here's where I could have made a much better choice, and instead of turning left, I turned right, or vice versa.
You're not perfect, Dad?
Well, it's been up for discussion. I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna sit down and say I'm not, but I'm just gonna let you know that probably. But anyhow, those right and left turns can be confusing. You get on the yellow brick road and the scarecrow goes, well, some went this way and some went that way. There's,
you need a Google map.
Yeah, use a Google map to get there.
Yeah.
But
well, I'll tell you, Dad. When I was doing filming, so my video should be coming in any hour now, back from the filmmaker, and we did some offline interview time, and so it's not being released now, but I'll tell you a little insight to it. He said, did growing up poor, did it drive you to do this? And I said, honestly, I don't think it does necessarily. I think what it is, though, is it gives me the insight to what it is that you need. And the number one lesson I learned was that education was not enough. You needed community and you needed game rules. And so I don't believe in handouts, because I'm a psychologist, and I know the number one thing that happens when you hand people things without them working for it is that you are literally telling them you are so valueless that I'm going to give you money not to work, or I'm going to give you a job that although something else could do it in your place, I'm going to make a law that says you're going to run the groceries. We cannot do this to people because we actually destroy their drive.
Right.
Having a job and recognizing your worth is an absolute necessity in life. And without it, we will see depression rates skyrocket, and they're already too high.
Oh.
There is no reason to believe, in fact, it's one of my top 3 that I'll be presenting in Boston. American people are not too stupid to care, and they are not too busy to get involved. They are eager to make changes. They just don't know which direction to run. So we need some pathways built. But this notion that people are incapable or that people in this nation are not valuable in some capacity. I totally disagree. It's just that everybody is valuable in a different way. And when you find that way for them, whatever it is, the whole country benefits, right? We don't want to have the haves and have-nots. That benefits no one, not even the haves. Eventually
Right.
that breaks. So we've got to create an opportunity for everybody to be successful, lift them up and press them forward. You don't do that with a handout, and you don't do that by force. You do that
No.
by empowerment, inspiration, time, support, encouragement. Um, and like I said, the point at which DoD says it's a necessity, I think we've hit rock bottom.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Take those people from Bowling Green. Yeah, that model is so incredible. And I know you
Stellar.
repeat yourself on Bowling Green so much, and God bless those folks up there in Bowling Green, Kentucky,
They're
because
one of my favorite.
I think they just watching that, and I would actually have you know I recommend maybe you make one more visit back there just to sit down with them again and kind
Oh, I
of
would
go
love to
through.
do the whole tour again,
Yeah,
with like a
well,
professional
that's hard to
crew.
do. Yeah, that would be a hard thing. But those folks, I think and that model is so transferable between so many different
Completely.
issues. It's a it's quite a model that some really great people up there really had some good ideas. And I'll take one other one that I thought was really quite interesting was the educator in Alaska. I thought she
Yeah,
was
she's
quite
great.
inspiring
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I mean, I think from a real boots on the ground personal level that both her and the Bowling Green folks have done, and obviously the gentleman that you were talking about today, because people when they lose faith in their value,
Yeah.
as you described,
Right.
are hopeless. They're hopeless. They give up. They quit.
They do.
They sit on the street and hold up a cardboard sign, and
They
that's what
do.
they do. And they just hope somebody dumps a dime in their bucket, and they can eat a hot dog tonight. And so that's a terrible way to go, and it's very very hard on a nation. And
And we have a lot
I
of
know.
vets in that situation.
Oh,
And
please, I don't.
so,
Yeah, that whole
it
discussion we could.
just,
Yeah.
yeah. And we have to recognize that. And we have to recognize how they got there and how we get them out of there. And I think the number one thing, and it's funny because I get asked a lot, why are you a Democrat? And I always say I'm a Democrat because I believe in small government, which flies in the face of what most people believe. But
Right.
I believe that we can help these people without more taxpayer dollars. And my belief in that is what fueled me to go around the country and find these programs. Most of these programs have little or no federal dollars at all, and they are making a difference in their community. Those are the
Right.
people we want to find and elevate, because the impact that those people have on their communities gets multiplied when connected to other communities and people who are just looking for, how do I find the pathway to help others? All we need to do is empower people to get there, and we can make a difference without raising taxes. This is
Well,
doable.
I just and I'll continue to go back to that's going to if and when when you get in there, inspiration to get that going, because you can't do it yourself. You already know all those
Yeah,
things, and I don't need to repeat any of it. But the
yeah.
fact is, there has to be somebody who can inspire that in folks. And
They do,
God
but they
bless you,
have to know how
dear.
to tie it to government. And so that's the
Well,
other
they
piece
do,
of it.
but I mean, it's
Do
still
you know
somebody.
how to get it into the executive branch? And that
Well,
is
that's
really
behind
what
the
I did in my
scenes.
job.
That's that.
Well,
Yeah.
but it's an important point because you can
Oh,
have
yeah,
the best
obviously it is.
ideas, and if you
But
don't know how to connect them,
right.
they're just good ideas.
Oh yeah.
So both pieces are important. You have to know how to
Absolutely.
get it into government. You have to know how to get it to people, and have
That's
to know how to lift people up. When people ask about the border, I said, there's all these people who want to help. Why are we not
right.
letting them help? We're refusing on principle, but not on reason. And that's true for our homeless. That's true for our single parents. That's true for individuals who are pregnant. There's a lot of people we can help without handouts and without government funding. And that's a model we don't normally hear, but I'm now completely confident it can be achieved. And wouldn't that be great?
wow. Yes.
So, Dad,
When's
I've
your
got to
next?
run.
I
I've,
know that I was just
yeah,
going to say
I've got
it's
a.
already 10:45, and I know you
Yep.
need to get on the road.
Oh,
So
yes, I've got to be there at 11, so I've got to get across the street.
I know.
So thank you, everybody. I will be live at 11:30 on the TED Show, so I hope that you will
All
join us
right.
then. All right,
And
talk
this
to you
is going to
later.
be on Facebook. Is that on
It will be
Facebook?
Facebook Live. Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, Dad.
All
I
right.
didn't mean to call you, sir.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.